Hey there, everybody, this is Cam Shay, and joining me today is Lucy O'Brien.
Hello, Cam Shay.
So we're doing a review commentary for Crypt of the NecroDancer, which is a game that I've just reviewed for IGN. It's out on PC. It's actually coming out of early access. So it's been in early access for a really long time, actually.
Okay.
And
So a lot of people will be familiar with it already, maybe.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of hype around this game because it's such an ingenious kind of central concept, which we'll get to in a sec. But yeah, the final release adds like the fourth zone in the game. It adds like a whole bunch of cool new stuff, like 2 more soundtracks that you can play through the game with, all sorts of great stuff. But what we're going to do is, because this is actually a rhythm action game and we don't really have the audio coming through our headsets, which is going to make it quite hard to talk and play at the same time and not just have it be disastrous. I'm just going to hop in and just queue up like a replay so we can just kind of see what the game's all about and just chat about it without the pressure of playing at the same time.
Just a note on the replay footage, if it is lagging a little bit, that is actually not indicative of the game itself.
No, it's just we've had some issues with the software we're using to capture, which we haven't been able to resolve. So the game runs really, really smoothly. So yeah, you just have to forgive us if it slows down slightly. So yeah, as you can see, I'm moving on every beat, and that's the core concept of the game, is that you build up a coin multiplier by moving on the beat, and that means enemies drop more gold, which means you can then buy more stuff from the merchants in the game, and also means that you finish your run with more gold, and that's kind of a key part of the game. So you're moving on the beat, but so are all the enemies.
Right.
And each enemy has its own distinct movement pattern that you need to kind of identify and work out how to kind of work around. So this monkey is chasing me on every beat, but because he was right behind me, I was able to just turn and attack, right? Whereas if he was 1 square further back and I jumped back, we'd be jumping to the same tile at the same time and I would take damage.
Right.
So there's these kind of rules that you learn about, like, okay, when can I attack? When am I going to take damage? So these guys, the skeletons, when his arms are up, he's about to jump forward a square. But I had like a sword that can reach, 2 tiles ahead, right? So I was able to kill him. Whereas you start out with the dagger, which is just like 1 tile in each direction around you. By the way, this is the merchant who just appears kind of randomly in the world and adds an operatic lilt.
He's got a lovely voice.
He does have a lovely voice. I just love that so much. So the game is kind of like this weird intersection between kind of logic and maths and problem solving, because you enter a room and you see the enemies and you go, okay, that guy's going to follow me, so I can lead him on, and then I can kind of use the dig mechanic to dig out a wall to stay stationary, so he's 1 square closer, so I can kind of like get him to where I need him to be to kill him. But then there's this enemy over here who's going to do this. This enemy is going to move on every 4th beat or even every 3rd beat. This enemy has like a range attack, like the dragons. The red dragon can just basically 1-shot kill you from across the screen.
Right.
But there's a tell, obviously, so you just know when you need to get out of its line of fire.
So there's a lot of depth to it that you really enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting design. There's all these different items that you can pick up. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is like there's this kind of logic in how you approach the enemies, but then there's this layer of randomness with what enemies appear, what the layout is, and what like pickups you're getting, right?
Yep.
So right now I've got a shovel that kind of just automatically digs through walls ahead of me. So that changes, the dig buffering kind of concept that is kind of core to how you deal with enemies. But then you pick up stuff like there's a whole bunch of different weapons, including stuff like a blunderbuss and like a crossbow that can shoot like across the screen, but you have to reload it. So yeah, different weapons have different kind of reach, which you have to then account for in how you're playing.
Yep.
There's tools, so you start it with just a base shovel that can dig through dirt walls, but then you can upgrade to different types of shovels that can dig through, different surfaces. In fact, like most of the items in the game come in like a bunch of different variants. So there's like titanium, glass, obsidian, which like an obsidian weapon, for instance, does more damage based on your coin multiplier. So that's another reason to keep that up. There's blood and crystal, And stuff like glass weapons, or if you have like glass armor on, it'll shatter.
Yeah.
If you pick up a glass key that can like rescue somebody, if you take a hit, it shatters and it's gone. So yeah, so that kind of stuff. Torches, different torches enable you to kind of see further into the level without having to kind of dig your way over there. Armor, headwear, footwear, there's rings, there's like spells that you can get, there's scrolls that you can use. You can expand what you can carry. There's maps and compasses, and you can get more heart containers. You can get food to restore your health. There's so much stuff going on here, and throughout it all, you're trying to just stay jumping on the beat.
Right.
And so it's kind of like this crazy pressure. So it makes it's really fun, but it's also just you're just hopping about, just trying to kind of do things logically. That was awful. We should have just stopped that replay before the end there. All right, let's stop into another one. So let's go for Zone 4, which is the newest one that's been added to the game.
So we've got a different character here.
Yes, so this is the Bard, and this is because this is a replay, and to keep the replays to keep the data usage really small, it basically just records like, okay, tile by tile movement, and then it syncs it up with the music.
Yeah.
But the way the Bard actually plays is you're not tied to the music in the same way. Like everything's still like if you move a tile, the world progresses one beat forward, right? But if you stand still, the world's frozen.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes the whole game. The gameplay doesn't change, but it's turn-based and it doesn't have that pressure of having to move on every single beat. So it's actually a really fun way to kind of play through the game because you can be a little bit more. You can take it a little bit slower, essentially.
Right.
It's still really hard. Like you still encounter situations where there's multiple enemies, and if you just make one kind of major mistake, you're dead and you're starting again, right?
So the addition of all of these different characters adds like even more depth to the game.
There are
really
10
changes
characters.
the game. Okay.
There are 10 characters in the game, and everyone is really distinct and interesting.
That's awesome.
So for instance, there's the monk, who's killed instantly if he picks up any gold.
Yep.
So you kill an enemy, and then you cannot jump back into that tile because you will die. But when you visit the merchant, you can choose an item for free. Not that great, like not necessarily a trade-off that's worth it. There's a pacifist called Dove who doesn't kill enemies, and she wields a flower, which she uses to confuse them. But she can, like the level exits are kind of unlocked to begin with, so she can get through and there's no bosses for her.
Yep.
There's Eli, who has no weapons aside from an infinite supply of bombs, which he can drop and kick, like Bomberman style. There's Melody, who wields a golden lute, and the lute can only attack from adjacent squares, so you kind of have to like sidle next to enemies to do damage. That, like the different weapons, it completely changes how you approach combat. So each of these characters demands like a really different approach, and you can kind of play through the game like, you just do Zone 1, and you beat the boss at the end of the 3 levels, and then you can do Zone 2, or you can do like a mode where it's like all zones in one run with less health to begin with. And there's local co-op, and all sorts of cool stuff. I mean, you can have your own soundtrack as well. So there's 3 soundtracks that you can choose between, or you can just load up your own MP3s for each level within each zone.
Now, so how well does that actually work?
It works really well, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously you want to be using music with a 4/4 beat because that's what this soundtrack is. That's how it works. But the beat detection is really good. Like all the tracks that I tried, it worked in exactly the same way as the main soundtrack.
So did you actually I mean, just from listening to the game, so far, I think the music is great. I mean, did you enjoy the soundtrack?
The soundtracks are all really good, actually. Yeah. But then it's just fun. Like once you've logged enough time to then you rediscover it with your own music,
right?
And so it kind of keeps it going. In fact, that kind of brings me to like my only real kind of major criticism of the game is that the meta game uses diamonds that you collect within each run. You can then spend them to upgrade your character a little bit, but also to unlock like power-ups and pickups that will then appear randomly within the world.
Yeah.
And honestly, like you know, you have to sink a fair bit of time in, but it won't be that long until you've basically bought everything you can and there's nothing more to spend those diamonds on.
Right.
So that kind of currency just becomes a little bit irrelevant, which is, you know, a bit of a shame, but to be honest, the longevity of this game doesn't come from that kind of meta upgrade like a Rogue Legacy. It comes from the fact that each character offers a really different challenge. There's a whole bunch of modes. You know, there's mod support, there's a level editor. You can play this game with a dance mat if you want to. You know, there's a daily challenge. There's like the ability to practice against every enemy in the game, every boss in the game, with every weapon in the game. So like what I was saying before about that mathematical kind of problem-solving puzzle nature that lies at the kind of the heart of the combat. You know, if there's an enemy that's giving you trouble, you can just practice and work out the exact kind of steps required, the dance steps required to beat it. So yeah, it's a really cool concept, and yeah, it's executed with yeah, like a lot of class.
That's fantastic. So what are you giving it?
I'm giving this game 8.8, and I highly recommend checking it out. And it's cool to see such a promising title come out of early access and, you know, be done and dusted.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Cam. I'm
No
really
problems.
excited to play this myself.
Yeah, we'll play
And
some
probably
local co-op.
suck at it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you will suck at it for quite a while. But it's actually got quite a good learning curve as well. So, yeah, it's fun.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, everyone. For more on Crypt of the NecroDancer, stick with IGN.
Bye.